Hello again. So last week we covered the hip flexor stretch, and today I want to go over stretching into the calf muscles. So a lot of people tend to complain about tightness in the hamstring. I always hear, oh, my hamstrings are really tight. I actually, from looking at my clients and working with my own body, I don't think that the hamstrings are really to blame. I think sometimes they just get a little bit overworked. I find generally people are very tight in the back, down into the calf muscles, and it's to do with the biomechanics around the feet. Everyone walking around in slightly heeled shoes, which I think is actually making everyone's Achilles a little bit too short, and it actually makes your whole of your legs less efficient because you don't have the full range of movement in that ankle joint. So you can't really propel through the feet as much. So I want to just go over a few foot exercises and some calf stretches that will help to create a little more length in the lower leg. And we're going to start now. Because I'm filming this at home, when I stand up you're going to lose my head, sorry, so you just look at my feet. So we're going to just stand into parallel. So it might be worth actually just trying to do a bit of a knee bend here just to begin with, just to see how that feels on the ankles. And I've done a little bit of a practice already, so this feels quite nice and juicy for me today. So I just want to get a little bit of a knee bend. But if you find, some people find that they really can't actually bend their knees without them dropping in, or the knees or ankles dropping so that they can get some movement going, I think just respect whatever movement is available, even if it's very, very slight. And you're just using that knee bend just to help you feel what range of movement is available inside that ankle. And then you're just going to roll onto the ball of the foot and just gently press into that metatarsal area. So I love doing this movement in the beginning of class, and I never fully appreciated this when I was doing ballet classes a long time ago. But actually, when you take this, the metatarsal into this position, what you're doing is you're actually stretching the tendinous insertions around the base of the toe, and that's around the MP joint. And that is a very tendinous, actually generally all the muscles in the lower leg connect into the foot via these long tendons, and tendons are just wonderful if they're elastic structures, that if they're pliable, if they're ready and available, they create a very efficient use of the leg muscles, because instead of using muscular strength to push you forwards when you're running or walking, you can actually just kind of bounce off the elasticity of the feet. So I love to do this very simple stretch here, just pressing into that metatarsal area to create that space. And it's actually very interesting. What happens when you go into this position is that the tendon gets slightly pulled forwards on the toe, so you actually get a much stronger, a much deeper stretch. You won't feel it, doesn't feel like a stretch, okay? But just trust me, it's happening. And then you're just going to pad through the feet, so just going from one foot to the other. And you're really just actually thinking of this as a kind of massaging for the MP joints. So try not to worry too much about the balancing up. A lot of people tend to tighten up in the calves. You actually just want to think of just rolling in the feet, rolling away. And then just dropping both heels down, and now come into that knee bend again. And oh my goodness, that just feels so much better already. I hope you can feel it. So I just really want to kind of emphasize that, because people go straight into the calf muscle, straight into the muscular. I actually think the muscles get tight because there is too much restriction lower down or higher up, and it's usually that the tendinous structures are not being fully stretched around the bone. So that's a very general way of putting it. But actually getting better elasticity and movement in the feet is going to actually make the muscles a little more efficient. So now let's go into a proper calf stretch. So there are two muscles in the calf. Obviously we don't really want to stretch the Achilles tendon because it's very tendinous. Tendons need to be pulled across the bones, but we don't really want to stretch them because if they're overstretched, they don't really bounce back, and they tend to, well, the Achilles will just tear. which we really don't want. So you're going to take hold of, I've got my nice squishy mat, but you can just use a rolled up yoga mat or Pilates mat. And we're going to step the ball of the foot now onto the mat and drop the heel down. And I think that the best thing to do is just step forwards and come off that heel and drop it down. And again, you know, I'm not feeling a big stretch here. I don't mind. I think it's very seductive to go into a massive stretch, and you're just going to rock forwards off that back heel and back again, and you're just gently kind of coaxing the structures in the lower leg to just open up. And yes, as I was saying, we have two calf muscles. You have the gastrocnemius, which will normally stretch when the leg is lengthened, and then we have the soleus, which will stretch, it's a little lower down. So now if I go into my soleus stretch, when I bend the knee, it takes the stretch a little lower down, and I can feel that this is exactly where my restriction is. So this is a lot tighter, and again I'm going to rock forwards and backwards. Now it's helpful if you can to hold on to something. If you don't feel stable, then you're going to be tightening up. So whenever you're stretching, it's really important to make sure you feel supported. We're just going to rock forwards and backwards. And then just coming off that and stepping off. And again, I'm just going to go back into my knee bends. And that just feels like I'm actually folding much deeper in the front of the ankle, which is a really important point. You know, people who do classes with me, you know, I talk a lot about the front of the ankle. I think it's very connected to the front of the hip. And I think that when you're not able to fold in the front of the ankle, you're also restricting the amount of fold in the front of the hip. So it means that when you kind of rebound and drop down into a knee bend, so that's particularly important, for example, when you're running, that you don't have that kind of cushioning in those two joints. And often the knee gets the impact, and that's why everyone gets very painful knees. And the lower back as well. So I think the hip and the front of the hip and the front of the ankle, allowing those areas to fold, is super important. And you can't do that if there's a restriction in the back of the ankle. Okay, so let's just do the other side. So I'm just going to keep facing this way. I'm going to bring the ball of the foot onto the rolled up mat or cushion, drop the heel down. We start with the gastrocnemius, and you know, if you're doing this with a rolled up mat, that front leg is just going to be on the floor, and I just literally rock off that leg and back. Now, there are lots of different variations of this, and I'm really falling over. Good idea. Hold on to something. So I find it useful to just initially just keep it simple, keep the leg in parallel. Just watch that your little toe and your big toe are both pointing forward, so there's no rotation that way to begin with, because a lot of people just tend to go into that outward rotation, because I think the outer part of the lower leg, the peroneals and into the iliotibial area, tends to be tighter for most people. Again, that's a generalization. Just in general, that seems to pull people into an outward rotation with the leg. And then I'm just going to come back a little bit and bend that knee, and then I'm just going to rock off that heel, so we go down into the soleus. It's a little bit easier for me on this side. And just rocking forwards and backwards. It's really important not to overdo these stretches, just getting a little bit of movement. And I'm just kind of swinging my pelvis forwards and back a little. And then I'm just going to come off there and come back into your parallel position, and once again I go into that knee bend. And to be honest, I'm more restricted on my left than on my right. My right could go much deeper, so if I allow my left heel to come off the ground, I get much more movements in the right ankle. So probably when I'm running or jumping or whatever, I'm probably kind of bouncing off that left leg all the time, so my right leg isn't able to articulate as nicely. But anyway, just something to be aware of. And that's it. Thank you.